are a best-selling writer. You're the daughter of a best-selling writer. You own 2 bookstores with your husband. Some might say books are in your DNA. Can you pinpoint a specific book or moment from your childhood that put you on this path of a literary life?
Oh, I don't know, Tim. I just have to back up and just fawn over you just a tiny bit.
No. We are here for you.
Okay, and we'll get to me. We'll get to me. I just want to say that as I said to Tim earlier, I feel like this whole event, like I got asked to go to the prom with like the cutest, coolest, smartest boy on the whole island.
I didn't even bring you a corsage.
But yeah, I'm so happy to be doing this.
I'm thrilled you're
here.
It's
really very exciting for me, so thank you. Okay, now I'll answer a question. It is really true that books are in my DNA. You know, my father wrote, 20 plus novels. My mom, who's here, it's her birthday tomorrow. You can wave, Mom. Ran an early literacy program for much of my life. Books were, it's not even that they were just in my DNA, it's that they were in everything. They were on every surface of every table in my parents' house. And much to my husband's chagrin, they were also on every surface in our house. Not just the bookshelves. Yeah. They're on the floor. They're everywhere. They're practically in the refrigerator, I just think that there's nothing better. I so agree with what Anne said, that books offer everything. They offer a safe place. They offer escape. They offer knowledge. And I gobble them up. I always have.
What would you say is your signature? What's the Emma Straub signature in any book you write?
That's such a. I feel so important answering that question. I would say, it's something that I did think about a lot when writing This Time Tomorrow, because sort of when I was thinking about it, it's a sad book. It's all about death, but it's also funny, and I was trying to figure it out as I was writing it. Like, will the strawberries?
It's spreading.
Will they be okay with this? Will the people who have loved my other books, will they like this one too? And I was worried about it because it felt so different to me, but in the end, when I was finished, I saw that it actually wasn't different. That it's the subject is more focused on grief, but it's still funny, and the characters, you still spend time in their heads in the same way. And so I would say people thinking a lot, like a lot of interior action, and humor. I hope. If somebody came up to me and were like, sorry, your books are never funny, I think that would be the most devastating.
This Time Tomorrow also features one of my favorite literary tropes, time travel.
Yeah.
Did you think, I think I like time travel, not the going back, it's that if you go back, then what would affect the present?
Yeah.
Were you able to reflect on time travel and time and all the questions? If you could go back in time, would you change something?
Yeah, yes. When I came up with the idea for this book, it was, my father was in the hospital, and I had just put aside the book that I was writing. It was 2020. I don't know if you remember 2020. It was kind of a bummer. And I was writing this sort of very rompy book, and I had to put it aside, first of all, because I had no childcare, and so I was hanging out with my 2 buddies over here. But then it also just didn't feel like the tone wasn't right. And my dad in the hospital was like, you should write a book about a woman visiting her father in the hospital. Which tells you something about his ego also. But he was right. He was right. And he said it, and I said, okay. And I had the whole thing right away, including the time travel, because it wasn't the woman visiting her father in the hospital that I wanted to really spend time with. It was thinking about where I really wanted to be with him, which was in, much of the book takes place in 1996 when I was 16 on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, where I grew up. And it was just like, it was the safest place I could go. Like, I knew where everything was. All the places I loved in my childhood were there, all the restaurants and the shops. And, it was the heyday where there was a Gap on one side of the street and a Banana Republic across. Woo! The glory days. But it was, I got to sort of text all my friends from childhood and say, okay, what would I kick myself for not including? And they would send me back all, this bagel shop, that hot dog place, all the places that we loved. And that's what I got to do. So it was my own time travel. It was like I got to spend time in this place that felt so sort of secure, and I felt so taken care of in this moment in the world where nothing felt safe.
Yeah. I was going to bring that up because the ARC that you sent out to booksellers said what you just mentioned about how last year was a destabilizing year for all of us, but writing helped me process the fear and sadness. Can you talk about, as a writer, how writing can be a form of therapy?
Oh, I know my publisher hates it when I talk about this, but yes. I just think it is. Maybe not for everyone. I'm one of, I know so many writers who are like, oh, I hate writing. But I'm like, well, really? Because, nobody's forcing you to do this. It's not, I don't know. I love it. I love writing, and I always have. When I was in the 7th grade, my English teacher had us write poems, and it was like, write a poem. And I was like, oh, and I wrote 50 poems that day. And then every day after that for...
And they're like, we're good.
Yeah, they were like, you can stop. But I couldn't stop because it was it was a place where I could put everything. And, to go back to my dad, my dad's books, for those of you who aren't familiar with the oeuvre of Peter Straub, the other kind of strawberries, they're sort of the dark strawberries.
Now, how would he have liked that name?
He would not have liked that. But his books are very dark, and there's murder and torture and serial killers and, all that fun stuff. And a lot of that, for him, it was a safe place. It was a safe place, and I understood as a kid that he had had a traumatic childhood, and writing helped him. That he processed so much of the bad and scary things in his life through his scary fiction. And it was safe there. It was okay. It couldn't hurt anyone else. And I won't speak for him, but it certainly seemed to help from my point of view. And so I knew that writing this could do that for me, or at least that was my hope, and it sure did. I think that when my dad died in this past September, I was as ready for it as I could possibly be, because I had spent the previous year thinking about it and writing about it and sort of working through it, and so it helped. It really, I also do regular therapy, to be clear. I don't think writing alone,
Yeah.
But yes.
It's so interesting. So the first sentence, for anyone who has watched someone pass away in a hospital, time did not exist in the hospital. And it's so true. I lost my sister to cancer 4 years ago, and in that hospice room, it just doesn't, and grief is just something that we don't talk about as a society. Yeah. It's something that we suffer with internally. Maybe at the funeral you say, I'm so sorry, and then everyone goes on with their life, but you do not. Yeah. With a year after your father passed, have you had some reflection on grief and how you've managed it?
Yeah, well, I think what I'm a note writer. Like, I love to send thank you notes, and I force my children to do it too. But I will send you a thank you note. I'm going to send a lot of thank you notes to the island of Nantucket. Just, thanks, Ribby. But one thing that I learned in this last year, and I mean, it sounds pretty silly and dumb, and I apologize to you in advance for having to listen to me say this, because most of you probably know, but I had always felt so proud of myself that when someone I knew had lost someone, I would send a note. Wow. What an effort, But what I've learned is the notes are wonderful. It's great to get those notes. But what is even better is the people who send the note and then they call you a week later. Or then I had one friend who lost her father a year before me, and she sent me flowers 2 months later. And she said, this is when people stop sending notes. So I'm here, So I learned that. So I feel like it's, I've learned in the last year just sort of how to be a better person for other people who are going through it, which I guess that's how so many things in life work. Before you have a baby, you think, I know what's being so helpful is going over there and, I don't know, you have one view of what's helpful, and then you actually have a baby and you're like, oh, no, what's helpful is bringing a lasagna, dropping it in a bottle of wine and running away and then asking if there's laundry to do, or, you just understand things differently. And I think grief is like that too.
So I was going to ask what your father would have thought about this book, but I actually saw on the Today Show that he did get to read it, which I think is beautiful. So I had to change my question to, if he was in this seat interviewing you, what kind of questions do you think he'd ask you about it?
Well, so he loved it. He loved this book. And it is a rare parent, or not just parent, it is a rare loved one who will hear you say, I'm writing a novel about you dying. And who will say, okay,
Can't wait.
And not offer any, okay, but, there were no buts. There was nothing. He didn't say anything. And then when he read it, he said, Emma, this is quite personal. And I said, yeah, I know. Is there anything that you want me to take out? Just tell me. And he said, well, what do you think I want you to take out? That is what he sounded like. And I said, nothing. And he said, that's right. Aww. So, but also I will say, so my friend Ada Calhoun published an incredible memoir called Also a Poet that was about her father dying. And similarly, her father had not yet died when the book came out, and has subsequently died as well. Her book was called Also a Poet, and in it, so my portrait of the father in my book, a fictional character, is great. He's weird, but he's loving, he's stable. The father in Ada's memoir is irascible and mean, and my dad read her book and loved it, and he said, her father is more me than I am. And I said, well, okay, so that I didn't, I think that I could have written a different version of him, but I didn't want the character in the book to be exactly him, and I didn't want the character in the book to be exactly me, because I'm a fiction writer. I wanted to write a story about our relationship, about how I felt about him, without the complications of trying to do an accurate portrait of him or of myself. And I didn't want, as I said, it's very unusual for anyone to say, okay, you're writing a book about me. So I very neatly cut out everyone else in our family. So, I have a brother, there's no sibling. My parents were married for 56 years, there's no wife. I have a husband and 2 children. They are not in the book. I didn't want to complicate it by having everyone else's feelings. Yeah. I just wanted mine.
And you deserved that.
Thanks.
It's also such an ode to New York City. And you grew up in New York City, and as someone from a small town in Wisconsin, that is so foreign to me because I was surrounded by cornfields, you were surrounded by skyscrapers. Can you tell me how that set you up for your writing and who you are as a person? Because I feel like where we live and where we grew up is really...
Sure. I mean, I love New York City. I think I always felt grateful to be there. I grew up on the Upper West Side, a few blocks away from the Museum of Natural History, and down the block from Central Park, and my parents just always had really interesting people around. I grew up surrounded by writers and artists and editors, and so I think it helped me in a lot of ways. I think that it helped me as a writer, in a sort of nepotism sort of way, because I knew everybody. And so still now when I go, I went for the paperback of This Time Tomorrow, I wrote a little essay about my dad dying, and so that's in the back of the paperback, and they had me come and record it for the audiobook, so that if you get the audiobook, you have Marin Ireland, who's one of the great audiobook narrators, read the book, and then you have me read this little essay. And I went in, and the guy who was the engineer in the studio at Penguin Random House was like, "Oh yeah, I recorded your father doing things." And that kind of stuff happens all the time, just all the time, at bookstores, just everywhere, and it's wonderful. I mean, I feel like I'm always talking to people who knew him in some way, and it's great. It's a wonderful feeling. He was a lot of fun, so we had a lot of friends.
Well, I'm sorry for your loss, and thank you for sharing. Yeah. This year, Texas school canceled an event with you.
Yeah. Don't I look dangerous?
This morning I was actually frightened.
Yeah.
Tonight we have an opening night celebration, and the word is freedom that we're going to concentrate on. Yeah. What does that word mean to you? And pulling in the Texas book banning, all the things, what does freedom mean to you in book?
Well, so I'll tell you why I was banned in Texas. I wasn't banned. Okay, first of all, I wasn't banned. There are so many vital, important books that are being banned in places like Texas and in Florida. Books that help children understand who they are. It is evil. It is evil the way people are trying to take books away. So I want to say that first, that's actually the important problem. What happened to me was much sillier, but related, which is that I was on book tour for my, here, let's pull it out. I'll show you. For my very controversial book, Very Good Hats. Did you know there's a portion of the population that just hates hats? No, it had nothing to do with hats at all. it was that I was going to Houston, Texas, to a suburb of Houston, Texas called Katy. And there was one parent, which is all it ever really takes, who disliked that I used the F word on my Twitter. It was in response, the tweet that they had pulled out was in response to a school shooting in Texas. And I said, F guns. But I didn't say F, I said the whole word. But I won't say it here. And that was what the parent objected to, and so I got uninvited from the school district. I mean, too bad for them, because I'm hilarious with small children. and Very Good Hats is a really fun book. But I'm making light of it because it didn't affect me at all. Very Good Hats is fun, but it would have just been a fun day for these kids. But the real problem is the books about other experiences, that these kids might have, that certain parents don't want to see reflected in those books because they don't want their children exposed to ideas that might make them think differently than their parents, and it's awful. It's awful. So I'm so glad that you guys are focusing on freedom, and your librarian is clearly the greatest person in the world, and things are good on Nantucket.
They are. So you're a mother of 2 small children. What keeps you up at night for them?
They keep me up at night. Yeah, I mean, literally they keep me up at night. But I get, what I worry about. I mean, I worry about that. I worry about, them being able to go to other places. Like when I decided where I wanted to go to college, I was like, oh, where do I want to go? And it turned out I wanted to go to Oberlin because I knew a cute boy who played the saxophone there. But I want them to be able to go places and to know that they have full access to everything, whether it's books, whether it's healthcare, whatever they need. I feel like that is changing in this country, and that's terrifying. So that's what keeps me up at night.
So you co-own a bookstore with your husband, 2 actually locations, because you just opened a new one. That it's like the 7 wonders of the world for me to go to that Books Are Magic mural and hold a book and pose in a picture for that. Highlight, lowlight of being a bookstore owner.
Well, so I should say that my husband does 97% of the work, and I get 100% of the credit all the time. But I mean, the highlight, well, no, I'll start with the low light. The low light is are all the things that we never thought about, before you open the bookstore. Like for my husband, I think it's like, oh no, it snowed so much. Nobody's coming in. He's got to get the snow blower and clear the sidewalk, that kind of stuff. Or managing people. That's the hardest part. The best part, which is the only part that I'm really good at, is standing there sort of near the door and being like, hi! Like if you walked in, I would say, hi! And we would hug and we would talk and we would take a picture together and we would talk about books and I would show you what I was excited about, and that's what I do all day long, with people I know and with strangers, and that's the best part of the bookstore for me, is just connecting with people and then connecting people with books.
I love it. You host a lot of author events at the bookstore. What's your favorite question to ask writers?
Oh, I'm terrible. See, this is the thing. You're actually very good at this, Tim. You're not looking at your notes. You are but they're over there. You're cool as a cucumber. People often ask me to be in conversation at the bookstore because they're like, oh, it's her bookstore. I guess we should ask her first. But I'm like, no, I'm not that good at it. I'm really not that good at it. So I try to get out of it whenever possible. But I don't know. I mean, what do I like to ask people? I mean, I always ask people what they're reading. I always ask people sort of, I guess I'm curious. I'm always curious to hear people talk about like the difference between the finished product and what they thought they were doing. Because I find, again, maybe this is not something to admit in front of a huge crowd, but I often find that I think I'm doing one thing when I'm writing a novel, and then I finish and I think, oh, actually that was about something else, you know? And sometimes it really takes some time. Like sometimes like the book comes out and then all the reviews start to say something and you think, oh my God, they're right, you know? They're right, it is about that.
How This Time Tomorrow was? Did you, or it sounds kind of like you set out to write what we read.
Yeah, well, I very much set out to write a book about grief and about love. But what I didn't think about until after was that it was in any way connected to the pandemic. Like I didn't see that as I was writing it. But afterwards, after I finished, I thought, oh my God, this is also, you know, this is what happens when you're stuck in your house. And, you know, I can see Manhattan from my office window, but I couldn't go there. Mm-hmm. And even if I had gone there, it was closed. You know, New York City was closed. And even if it had been open, it wasn't the New York City of my childhood. You know, like I was able to sort of look at the differences and time not only in my own life and in my own body, but in the life of the city, which I think, you know, I mean, I think we all do that wherever we're from, which is you point at the store and you say, well, that's Harriet's hardware store. You know, it's not, even though there's a sign on it that says Tim's bookstore, you know, you always remember 2 or 3 iterations back. Yeah. But yeah, that's how I look at New York, where when I'm trying to describe where something is, I probably don't describe what's there now. I say what was there. Yeah, when people walk into the new bookstore, they always say, what was here?
I want to go back to Very Good Hats. And I want to ask what it is for children, but that I also want to find sometimes the best children's books, there's a deeper message that everyone can take away from. So there's not a lot of children in this church, but
I got 2.
There are 2.
I got 2.
So what is this about for them? But then what is it about for all of us?
Well, I think it's the same. I think it's the same for them as it is for us, which is that imagination and play are important. You know, like it's really the genesis of the book came from, when we walked to kindergarten, I think River and I used to play all these word games and talk about, you know, sort of make up poems and stories and things. And then Eloise, which is one of my favorite books of all time still, Eloise says, tissue boxes make very good hats. Which, of course, they do. There's the opening right there. You just have to plunk it on. And so this was, it was 2020 again when, this was like early 2020 when I started working on this, that, I was thinking of things for us to do all day and making
that on
books.
Your head.
Yeah, and making books was one of them. And this was one of the books that I made. And I thought, well, actually, I think it's good. Like, I think other people would like this. Do you have a bag of hats next to you?
I have a gift for you because I'm the ultimate stuck up for my prom date. I got you
oh my God,
a strawberry bucket hat. And then I also got you, because it's your mom's birthday hat.
Oh my God.
So happy birthday, Mom.
Tim.
Okay, before we get to some audience questions, I have a lightning round. This is my favorite.
Oh God, okay.
Are you ready?
I'm scared, but I'm ready.
Okay, buckle up.
Okay.
What is your favorite book of yours?
This time tomorrow.
Your favorite novel of all time?
Middlemarch.
Who are your auto-read authors?
Ann Patchett, Lori Moore. Oh God, how many? Do you want?
One more.
Tom Perrotta.
Nice. This is weird. Favorite book on grief?
You know what? Can I admit something horrible?
You can.
I really haven't read many. Like especially this year, so many people gave me recommendations, but I just didn't feel like I could read them. But before my dad died, I did read this Pema Chodron book about the bardo, which was really helpful to me for thinking about it, that stage where you're going through it, you know, because people don't talk about grief, but people really don't talk about that, where that sort of anticipation, transitional period. Sorry, you said lightning round, okay?
Okay, this is all 90s. Favorite 90s book? This is tough because it's publication dates, but...
Oh God, okay. The Secret History.
Ooh, good one. Favorite 90s song? Go back to those days.
Oh, what's my favorite 90s song, Mikey? I don't know.
You can skip it.
69 Love Songs. The Magnetic Fields, all of them. That was 90s. Okay. Yeah.
Favorite 90s movie?
Reality Bites.
Whose poster did you have on your wall?
River Phoenix, all of them.
You could take 3 of your characters to dinner. Who are you taking to visit again?
Okay, this is hard. Okay, so in Modern Lovers, there's a couple who owns a restaurant. So let's pick them because even if you go to somebody else's restaurant, you get treated really well. So we'd probably get sent a lot of free food. And then let's go with Laura Lamont. Laura Lamont never gets any love. She's from my first novel. Nobody read my first novel. So
from Door County,
She's
Wisconsin.
from Door County. She's from Wisconsin. So you know she's nice. Okay, so I'm taking them.
Okay, your pseudonym, it's really your stripper name, but we're going to say pseudonym. First pet and street you grew up on.
See, but this is terrible for people who grew up in Manhattan.
That's right.
Because it's Rainbow, which is a good start.
Rainbow?
But then it's 85th Street, which is terrible.
Rainbow 85th?
Yeah?
That's good.
Okay.
What would she be writing? You can't say because we're filming this?
Yeah, I don't... I'm going to have to think on that.
And what are you reading right now?
I'm reading Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. All of my
good.
booksellers are obsessed with her, and but her previous books are that thick, and they're all serious science fiction, which isn't really my bag right now, especially this part, the really long part. But this one is it's like a satire about race and publishing, and it's
good.
delicious. It's delicious.
Thank you, Emma, so much.
Thanks, Tim.
We have time for maybe 1 or 2 audience questions. Does anyone have an audience question for Emma?
Hello.
Hi. Thanks so much for this. It's wonderful. I heard you on a podcast say that you, I think it was The Vacationers, where you moved them to a different location because the book was not working.
Yes.
And I thought it was fascinating, and I'm wondering, would you share what that first location was that they were in?
Yes. Sorry, I'm taking off my strawberry hat just because my head is getting sweaty, but I love it, and I'm going to treasure it forever. So I was working on a novel for a long time, for more than a year, maybe 2 years, that I just couldn't get right. It all took place at an anniversary party. It took place in a bookstore that doesn't exist anymore on the Upper West Side called Shakespeare and Company. And it was terrible. It was just a total mess. It was all these flashbacks. It was like a how to not write a novel, basically. But I'd written hundreds of pages, and so I knew all these characters so well, and it just wasn't working. And then I realized that what I had to do was I had to take them, instead of having them on the Upper West Side, surrounded by their lives, I had to pluck them out and put them on an airplane and send them somewhere else, which gave me the structure that I needed to tell the story that I wanted to tell. It's the same story. It was the same story. It was just that I needed sort of a different container for it. And once I decided where they were going, the novel came together so easily because I'd done all the legwork. I'd done all the work. I knew them so well, and so it was just going on the trip with them. Yeah. Thanks.
One more.
Hi, I never thought I'd ask this question, but I have to. My name is Alice, and I'm struck by how many books have characters named Alice. I'm reading one, I just read another, and now you have another Alice. And I know choosing the name of a character is very critical.
Yeah.
So why did you choose Alice?
Well, first of all, lovely to meet you, Alice. And I hope you enjoy all of the fictional Alices who have joined you.
Do.
I think that Alice, so the book is about a writer, it's about a science fiction writer and his daughter, his only daughter. And so, I don't know, what would a person who loves books name a little girl?
Alice in Wonderland.
Alice in Wonderland, right? So I thought, I thought that it was a name that he would choose for her, and it was a name that makes me think of going through little doors and
Rabbit holes.
Yeah, and rabbit holes, exactly. So your name was perfect. Thank you for sharing it with
And
me.
I have my own book named Dear Alice.
Emma, thank you so much. It was such a treat. Thank you all for being here. I hope you
Thank
can
you.
stay with us the rest of the day, and thank you.
Thank you.